Welcome to Database Searching Basics, creating a search strategy. Knowing how to create a high-quality search strategy is an important step in finding literature that will be useful for your research. In this module, you'll learn how to select appropriate subject headings and keywords to use in your search and how to combine them with Boolean operators to create a comprehensive search strategy. You'll also learn about truncation, which is a special symbol that tells the database to find records with alternate endings of your search terms. There are two types of terms you'll want to include in your search strategy: keywords and subject headings. Keywords are terms you select to describe your topic. They're the words you typically think of when you think of a concept. For example, cancer or heart attack. Subject headings, also called controlled vocabulary or thesaurus terms, are words or phrases that are selected by subject experts to represent specific concepts. There are subject headings for every academic discipline, but we're going to focus on the medical subject headings, also called MESH. MESH are created and maintained by the National Library of Medicine. They have their own database, and they're used in many other databases like PubMed to help group together literature about the same topic. Think of subject headings like hashtags on social media platforms. They help you find literature about your topic that might use terms that are different than those you would use in your own search strategy. For example, neoplasms is the MESH term for cancer. So using the subject heading neoplasms in your search strategy will retrieve records that use tumor, cancer, and other cancer-related terms. You can often find MESH terms listed in the record for the article, so you can see at a glance what some of the possible subject headings that represent your topic might be. But don't forget to search for terms in the MESH database. MESH records include several bits of information that can help you select the best term for your concept. The scope note is the definition of the subject heading according to the National Library of Medicine. It's easy to assume what a term means, but be sure to check the scope note because sometimes the definition by the National Library of Medicine is different from what the term means to you. Also, look at the list of entry terms. This is an easy way to gather additional synonyms to use as keywords. Besides checking the list of entry terms on the MESH record, how do you come up with additional synonyms? One method is to use the keywords you already know to search for relevant articles, and then look for additional terms in the titles and abstracts of the search results. This is a great way to collect additional keywords that you may want to include in your search. In this example, you're searching for type 2 diabetes. Notice that type 2 diabetes is also listed with a hyphen and also by the initials T2DM. You may want to include these keywords in your type 2 diabetes search string to be sure you don't miss relevant articles that may refer to this concept only by the hyphenated form or by the initials. Now that we have found the MESH term and some keywords for type 2 diabetes, let's build our search strategy for this concept. Databases use Boolean operators and, or, and not to connect terms and concepts to create a search string. The Boolean and is used to join different concepts together, for example, type 2 diabetes and Mediterranean diet. The Boolean and tells the database to retrieve only those records that have both terms, which focuses your search and retrieves fewer results. In this example, we're searching for articles that are about both type 2 diabetes and the Mediterranean diet. Notice that there are only 547 results retrieved for this topic, and that both concepts are found in each record. The Boolean R is used between terms in the same concept. For example, type 2 diabetes or T2DM. The Boolean OR tells the database to retrieve records that have any of the terms in the search string, so it expands your search and increases the number of search results. In this example, you're searching for type 2 diabetes or the initials T2DM. Notice there are nearly 200,000 results using just these two keywords. Also notice that the search results contain either term or both. The Boolean not is used to exclude terms. For example, you want to search for literature about the Mediterranean diet but without olive oil. Mediterranean diet, not olive oil, will retrieve records that include Mediterranean diet but will exclude all records that have the phrase olive oil, including those records that also have the phrase Mediterranean diet. Although the Boolean not can be helpful to narrow a search, it is used sparingly because it can leave out results that may be relevant to your topic. And finally, truncation. Truncation is a way to search for multiple variants of a term. For example, diet, diets, and dietary. Each database will have a unique symbol to use for truncation, but many use the asterisk. There are a few things to remember when using truncation. First, some databases require at least 4 letters for truncation, so boy asterisk will not retrieve boy, boys, or boyhood. You'll need to include each term as a separate keyword joined by the Boolean OR. Also, be aware that truncation may retrieve irrelevant results if the stem is common to several words. For example, test asterisk will retrieve test, tests, tested, and testing, but it will also retrieve testosterone. Remember these tips and you're well on your way to becoming a superstar searcher. Now that you have learned how to construct a search strategy with subject headings, keywords, Boolean operators, and truncation, click on the quiz to test your knowledge. It's not graded, so the correct answers will appear once you submit the quiz. Once you complete the module, you'll be awarded a badge. And remember, if you need help, ask a librarian.